Hello, Joomlers. It is about 3:36 in the morning, and I wanted to give some context to one of the posts that I made recently in the Joomla Facebook group and just outline how I do some of my content planning. So, we'll say 3 hours ago, I asked this question. Does anyone care to share their planning process when it comes to users, categories, custom fields, and the permissions associated? Now, in Joomla, you have users, categories, custom fields, etc. And you kind of have to have a really good idea before you build out your site. So I pose this question because I'm curious as to how other people do it, and I want to know if the way I go about it is overkill or not enough or like a really good idea. So I'm going to share that here, um, actually. So let's go ahead and minimize this. But also with the further context, I did ask. Like I was curious is does anyone start their with content types and user types and then go from there? Do they draft in a spreadsheet? Spoiler alert, as you can see right here, I do it mine in a spreadsheet. And then another option was, do you address permissions throughout, or do you focus on it after categories, groups, and fields are created, or somewhere in the middle, which also sounds like chaos. Well, for me, how I am organizing mine now and where I feel comfortable, because it's ever, um, we'll say, evolving process, is I focus on, I kind of think about them all together and I throw them all out on the spreadsheet and then I start to organize them. My users, like who's going to be using the app, that's kind of probably the easiest one to figure out first is your users. And just for the sake of this video, it's not going to be super long. I'm only going to be focusing on article and custom fields for right now. But I focus on my users because it's usually easy to figure out who is going to be using your site or the web app, and then what they're going to be able to do on it, and then the information you need to do that, which is usually where custom fields come in at, right? The custom fields about the user and the custom fields that are attached to the content. So, with that, let's jump over to focus on this here. Up there now, I guess. So, where I focus, or scratch that, one, for the project that I'm working on right now, that I'm using the example for, it's more so a web app than a website. So, it's more about management rather than consumption. So, we're not this making like a website that has a whole bunch of like a magazine or something like pages to read, and or a blog. That's not the focus here. And I'm using Joomla 4 and trying to maximize the use case. I mean, like all of its new features, right? Um, and I'm taking into consideration that I want to utilize the API, and I'm going to be utilizing. I'm going to be utilizing the web services API that is a part of Joomla 4. So I care about how my content is going to be coming, how to inject it, and also how to get it out, what it's going to look like when it comes out. All right, so I'm thinking about that in advance, as well as, of course, the different users that are going to be consuming the information. Now, since our use case is more so like about a web app, and I am maximizing custom fields, I believe that I'm using an excessive amount of custom fields. So we have over 300 on just content types. Some overlap to user fields, just on article fields. Custom fields, we're going to be using almost 300 custom fields there. But then when it comes to the user fields, that one's just under 200. I think it's just under 200 possible fields for a user. Um, I know. I'm pretty sure that's overkill. I don't have a lot of experience with other people's projects, but I think that I'm going um, overkill with the custom fields. So with this project having so many fields, I think that whatever I do here is going to make it so much more of a breeze for a project that uses significantly less custom fields and doesn't have as many users, etc. So let's take a look at what I got up here. So as you can see, I have these different colors is just to differentiate faster with the eye. a thing that I can't do in Joomla. Right? So I can differentiate between the different groups of information. Now, this article view or this content view utilizes about 96 different variables. As I can see, the first empty one is 97. So that means I have 96 different custom fields or different fields that need to be addressed on that page. Because I utilize also the native parameters for an article. But let's just say, for the sake of simplicity, it uses about 90. It uses almost 100. So 96 different custom fields. Seeing that all in one place and being able to collapse and expand and easily organize things, can't do that in Joomla. So one of the really good reasons of using this method of planning your content in a spreadsheet, I know I'm not the first person to do it. I'm confident it's done by many, but I don't know if you do it like this. Um, but doing it in a spreadsheet like this, I am able to organize my content, right? Organize my custom fields and group them easily, because I can see everything at once. Now, this is not with direct respect to design, like how those custom fields are going to be laid out. This will help with the layout, actually. When it's big, when you can see, okay, all this information needs to be somewhere near each other, right? Um, if there's someone else that's doing the design, they can look at this and have some type of understanding of the relativity of information. And of course, I can add more notes to that. But before any design or any layouts are created, once we put all of these fields inside of Joomla, we already know what order that we want them in. All right. So these fields are all grouped, and some are just because they're similar, but many because they're going to be using a subform. As you can see here, in column H, I have the first most relevant field type. All right, so you can see this one is blank, and as of right now, the information inside of this one, I'm referring to them all as as identifiers. So I can add them to a subform that's not repeatable because there's only one version of each one of these. Um, and then it can just be called upon later. Um, but if I want, I can easily decide to say, you know what? Let's just make this all one subform. Oh, by the way, I just decided to implement or make a list of all of the possible fields that we have, including some of the native parameters. And I'm also using Tassos's advanced custom fields so that I can see what my options are. All right. And decide if I'm going to use the native URL or if I'm going to use the Tassos URL. All right. For their custom field, if I want to use text or text area, so I'm going to say this is the native field, and then you know what, these are all they're going to still be the same field type, but they are now going to be, instead of being just regular fields, they're going to be the subform type. All right, so let's go ahead, and they're going to be subform components. So now a reminder to myself when I'm putting these in, or a reminder to this team member, hey, Kay, when they're looking at this, if he's going to be the one that's putting the fields, that's installing the fields or setting them up inside of Joomla, he knows exactly what we're doing. We know what the title is going to be. We know what the field name is going to be, and we know what the field label is going to be. So we can set that up in here so there's no confusion on that side. Another thing is that we know that Joomla automatically generates field names, which is what you see on the back end. So if we go ahead and we look at what it's going to be in the code, like if you're using the API or using the JSON or whichever, and you want to see what something is, all of your custom fields, they're going to have that field name, right? Similar to how an article has an alias. Yeah. Okay, so if I want to use that field name, which would be here, right? This is completely unrelated or a separate example when I was just trying to find all of the fields, right? And see the schema, right? If I want to decide exactly what those are going to be. I want to use my structure and not the automatically generated structure, because my fields were created before I even got to Joomla. Um, or if I want to use them with integrations that I've set up before, again, I even got to Joomla. I want things to just be consistent. I'm going to make my own field names, and you can have that already set up as well. So super simply, this is kind of the bulk of it all, is setting up a sheet like this. And if I want to use the fields in some other piece of content and I want it to then just be rendered, then I just add these two columns with the brackets so I can just copy all three together and paste them. Because guess what? Once this is all done, this file is now basically like some of your documentation for your website. Now, right for this one, for right now, I have many other columns that I would have in, say, like this one, which is the master sheet for all of the different fields of this category. I obviously have a lot of work to do still. But as you can see right here on the right hand side, I can start to address access levels in the field groups, and again the field ID and the type. So it seems kind of redundant. That's because I have to change a bunch of things, but nonetheless it's just an example I wanted to share with you. So now going back here, yeah, this is a really good piece of documentation. I can also use this now once I further master the API with Joomla. It now allows you to also create fields and change and update fields and content and things in a whole new way. So theoretically, the method that I use here for a project that has so many different fields, if they're all organized and done correctly here, I should be able to then create all my fields in bulk like that, using Integromat or just running them all through Postman or something, to just create all these fields. I would of course have to tweak this sheet, but for the most part, I'm pretty sure I would be able to just create fields really fast. So that would then be really efficient. So without going too crazy, further like or deeper into my whole process, because I wanted to keep this concise to just this component, which is again some of my fields, some of my custom fields, and how they're going to be set up for a specific view. So I'm going to go back to this other page because I missed I guess a big piece of content. One, all of your fields, list them all out here, and then your grouping, which is kind of what I had on the other page. And then you have your field name, but then you have the explanation, I'm sorry, the definition of each one of your fields, right? And then you have your different user groups. So your different user groups. So this is actually, this content is actually going to be a span two different websites that use the same backend. So all of my different user groups, right? And then my access and so on and so forth. So for instance, right here, as you can see, or not there, column N is, this is Dav Boom. That's what this is, right? So then I took all of the fields that have a check mark for Dav Boom. I can just filter this out, and then I can only see those fields if I wanted to before we start creating it. I can go through each field one by one and see who is this relevant to, right? To just see. I didn't implement access levels, but I do have another field, another page that is referencing or kind of starts to address access levels, which needs to be cleaned up, like this one here, which is going to have the new access level check mark, so on and so forth. But like I said, don't want to go too crazy with this. I was able to set these up here, and then I made a whole page that's specifically for that one. And then the last, I guess, cool thing about that is that once I kind of detail this out, for the other pages that are going to be similar to this one, I don't have to start from scratch. I then just duplicate it and then remove and add some things that aren't going to be there. that are or aren't going to be there, and I can just reorganize the groups because they're probably going to be grouped the same way on other sites, on other pages. And then I'll probably add like the field group column here, because if there's almost 100 fields, then they're probably not going to all be on the same page. But I'll be able to decide which ones will be on the same page and which ones won't, or same tab. I'm sorry, I said page. I'm referring to field groups in the tab that you see on the back end, or when you're in edit view of these fields. So yeah, I think that kind of wraps up and gives you a good idea of how I handle some of my structure and content planning when it comes to a Joomla site, or probably kind of like any site. This is pretty agnostic. You can just make some tweaks and it can work for anything. But that's how I do some of mine. If you're watching this like from the Joomla group, I really do um, want to hear any feedback on how anyone else manages theirs. And because it's the second time we're recording this, I want to make sure I don't leave anything out. I did just find a new tool that was recommended to me in Joomla, but I found it like literally just like right beforehand. Um, a PWF ACL manager, which is looks just like this. It looks just like my method or madness here. So I'm excited to use that to further organize or detail these things. But yeah, it's 3:54 in the morning, and I should not be awake. But I'm here, stammering around. But I hope I was still informative to anybody that watched this. Let me know in the comments if you think I should expound on my process or make it a little more formalized, and probably more coherent than this 4 a.m. version. And or hit me up on Twitter. Actually, I'll probably be more responsive there. I don't really pay attention to my YouTube. I really put this up for my team and some of the folks in Joomla to watch and hopefully provide some value. But aside from that, I hope you all have a great day. Stay awesome, and always stay dope. See you in the next one.